when an HOA president pointed a gun at my 7-year-old daughter just because she used crutches on her ramp. She thought she was enforcing the rules. What happened next destroyed her life in only 3 minutes and showed our entire neighborhood the true meaning of courage, love, and forgiveness. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also, like and subscribe for more stories. The scene still replays in my mind like a nightmare. My little girl, Emma, lying on the wooden ramp I built with my own hands, her colorful crutches just inches out of reach. And Karen Mitchell, the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood standards, standing over her with a gun in her shaking hands. One wrong move, one trigger pull, and my child's story could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it became the spark that transformed our entire community forever. But to understand how we got to that terrifying moment, you need to know about Emma's world before Karen entered it. Emma wasn't just a child with leg braces and decorated crutches, she was a warrior. 2 years earlier, we had lost my wife, Sarah, in a devastating accident that left Emma badly injured. Doctors saved her legs, but walking would never be the same. Crutches became her wings, her way to move forward, and the ramp outside our home. It wasn't just wood and nails. To Emma, it was a bridge between grief and hope, between isolation and freedom. That ramp carried her dreams, her laughter, and even the memory of her mother, who once filled our garden with purple and yellow flowers. Every morning, Emma counted each step she took down the ramp like a ritual of bravery. And for us, it was simply life until Karen decided it violated her rules. The morning sun always had a way of softening our neighborhood, painting everything in golden streaks that made even the plainest houses look warm and inviting. To most people, it was an ordinary suburb, freshly cut lawns, neat driveways, children's bicycles leaning against garage doors. But to me, each morning felt like a delicate balancing act, holding together the fragile pieces of our life after the accident. Emma, my little girl, was at the center of it all. At just 7 years old, she carried more strength in her tiny frame than most adults I knew. Every day began with the same ritual, adjusting her crutches, tightening the straps on her leg braces, and checking that the butterfly and flower stickers she had carefully placed on them hadn't peeled away overnight. "Good morning, sunshine," I would whisper, crouching to her level. She'd grin, the same mischievous sparkle in her eyes that reminded me so much of Sarah, her mother. Emma always insisted on brightening her world if her legs couldn't move like before. Then her crutches would sparkle instead. Our ramp stood proudly at the front of our house. Built from basic lumber and hardware supplies, it was nothing fancy, but it represented freedom. Without it, Emma would be trapped, cut off from the school bus, the park, even the porch where we sat to watch the stars. With it, she moved with confidence, counting each step aloud like a victory. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Lucky number 7, just like my age. She would chirp, tapping the ramp with her crutches in rhythm. For Emma, every descent down that ramp was proof that she was still part of the world, not just an observer of it. And for me, watching her steady determination each morning was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Heartbreaking, because I remembered Sarah's soft voice telling Emma bedtime stories about dancers and ballerinas' dreams the accident had cruelly stolen away. Inspiring, because Emma refused to let tragedy define her. She didn't want pity, she wanted to live. The ramp wasn't just practical, it was sacred. It carried the echoes of Sarah's love. Sarah had always filled our garden with purple irises and yellow daisies, a riot of colors that made even strangers stop and smile. After the accident, Emma asked if we could paint flowers on the ramp, just like Mommy's garden. We hadn't finished yet, but the promise of adding those blooms kept Emma excited. "Daddy," she asked one morning, balancing on her crutches with surprising grace, "can we paint purple and yellow flowers today? Mommy's favorite." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile, even as the memory of Sarah twisted like a knife in my chest. "Of course, sweetheart. After school, we'll make your ramp even more beautiful." Her face lit up, and for a moment, the grief lifted. Life wasn't easy. Every day was full of small challenges, tightening straps that rubbed against her skin, adjusting the rubber tips of her crutches, making sure she didn't trip on uneven sidewalks. But Emma handled it all with courage that humbled me. She never complained, never asked why life had singled her out for hardship. Instead, she found joy in little victories, reaching the bottom of the ramp faster than yesterday, decorating her crutches with glittery tape, helping our elderly neighbor carry groceries by holding the door open. To the world, Emma was a disabled child. To me, she was living proof of resilience. And in those quiet mornings, as she leaned on her crutches and asked questions about constellations, flowers, and math problems, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could heal. But peace in this world is fragile. It takes only one person, one voice, one act of cruelty to shatter it. And for us, that storm came in the form of Karen Mitchell, the new neighbor who believed rules mattered more than people. I first noticed her the way you notice a storm cloud. On a sunny day, something out of place. darkening the edges of everything. Karen Mitchell had moved in 3 months earlier, and in that short time, she had transformed our quiet, friendly street into something tense and watchful. She was tall, severe, with cold gray eyes that seemed to measure everyone like they were, breaking some invisible rule. On that morning, as Emma and I carefully made our way down the ramp, there she was, standing at the edge of her property line, arms crossed, chin lifted, eyes locked on us with a look that could curdle milk. "Mr. Johnson," she barked, her voice slicing through the peaceful morning air like a knife. I paused mid-step, keeping my hand lightly on Emma's shoulder as she balanced on her crutches. "Good morning, Karen. Beautiful day, isn't it?" She ignored the greeting. Instead, she jabbed a finger toward the ramp beneath Emma's feet. The very ramp that allowed my daughter to leave our home safely. "We need to discuss that unauthorized structure immediately," she declared. "It's been brought to my attention that you've made modifications to your property without HOA approval." The words landed like a slap. I blinked, trying to process the absurdity. Unauthorized structure, my daughter's lifeline to the world, was being reduced to a violation on a checklist. "This isn't just a modification," I explained, keeping my voice as calm as I could manage. "It's an accessibility ramp. Emma needs it to navigate safely with her crutches and leg braces. Surely you understand this isn't optional, it's a necessity." Karen's lips tightened into a thin, disapproving line. "I don't care what you call it or what purpose you claim it serves. Rules are rules, no exceptions, no special treatment, no sob stories. You have exactly 48 hours to remove this eyesore, or the HOA will be forced to take immediate legal action." Beside me, Emma froze. Her little hand tightened on her crutch until her knuckles turned white. I could feel her trembling, not just from the braces pressing against her legs, but from the sharp cruelty radiating from this woman. "Daddy," Emma whispered, her voice small and confused. "What does the scary lady mean? Why is she angry at my ramp? How will I get down to the street without it?" Her wide eyes searched mine, desperate for reassurance. My heart cracked into 1,000 pieces. How could I explain to my child that some adults are so blinded by rules and pride that they forget compassion entirely? I crouched beside her, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "Don't worry about it, baby girl. Some people just don't understand how important things are. But this ramp isn't going anywhere, I promise." But even as I spoke, I could see the hurt already sinking into Emma's heart. Karen, apparently unsatisfied, pressed on. "And another thing, those crutches take up far too much space on the public sidewalk during your walks. Several residents have complained about having to move around her. Keep your medical equipment on your own property where it belongs." That was the breaking point. I straightened, fury pounding in my chest. Her crutches are not equipment. They are part of her life. The sidewalk is for everyone, including children who walk differently. If you have a problem with that, then that's your problem, not ours. Karen's eyes narrowed, her expression sharpening into something almost triumphant, as if she thrived on pushing people to their limits. 48 hours, Mr. Johnson. Not a minute longer. I forced myself to turn away, guiding Emma carefully toward the waiting school bus. The last thing she needed was to see her father explode in rage. But Karen's words followed us like a poisonous echo, loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "There's absolutely nothing to discuss." 48 hours. Emma climbed the steps of the bus slowly, her crutches tapping against the metal. Normally, she would chatter with her classmates or wave excitedly out the window. That morning, she pressed her forehead to the glass, silent and heavy-hearted. And I knew then this wasn't just about a ramp. This was about cruelty disguised as authority. Karen had just declared war on my daughter's right to live with dignity. The rest of that day felt heavier than usual, like a storm cloud had settled over our home and refused to leave. Emma, usually so full of chatter and questions, was unusually quiet as we waited for her school bus in the morning, and even as I waved her off, the sparkle that normally lit up her eyes had dimmed, and I knew it wasn't because of her braces or the weight of her crutches. It was the weight of Karen's words. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself that once Emma got to school and was surrounded by friends, she'd bounce back. School was her sanctuary, the place where she felt normal, where her differences didn't define her. But around noon, my phone rang, and the sinking feeling in my stomach told me I was wrong. "Mr. Johnson," came the gentle voice of Principal Martinez. "This is Riverside Elementary. I'm calling because Emma has had a very difficult morning. She's asked to call you several times and seems extremely upset. She's with the nurse right now." My heart clenched. "Is she hurt?" I asked, quickly. "No, not physically. But she keeps asking if she'll be able to walk home safely today. She's crying more than we've ever seen her. We thought you should know." Within minutes, I was in my car, racing toward the school. Emma had always been resilient, stronger than most adults I knew. But for her to break down like this, it meant the fear had dug deep. When I arrived, I found her in the nurse's office, curled up on a chair with her crutches leaning against the wall. She looked so small without them, her leg braces visible beneath her dress. She lifted her tear-streaked face when she saw me. "Daddy," she whispered, her arms outstretched. I rushed to her, pulling her close as she shook in my embrace. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Tell Daddy what's hurting that beautiful heart of yours." Her voice trembled as she spoke into my shirt. "What if that lady takes my ramp away? How will I go up to my room? How will I look at the stars with you at night? What if I get stuck inside forever?" Her words pierced me deeper than any weapon ever could. Since Sarah's death, our nightly ritual had been sacred. Emma and I would sit on the porch, gazing at the stars, keeping Sarah's memory alive. The ramp was what made those moments possible. Was her bridge not just to the outside world, but to her mother's memory? I cupped Emma's cheeks, forcing her to look into my eyes. "Listen to me carefully. Emma, nobody is taking your ramp away. Not now, not ever. I promise you that with every bit of strength I have." "But what if they do, Daddy?" she asked, fresh tears spilling. "What if I can't come home anymore? Then they'll have to go through me first," I said, my voice firm with a determination that surprised even me. Emma studied my face for a long moment before finally nodding, her grip tightening around my neck. She wanted to believe me, but the fear lingered. That night, after tucking her into bed, I sat at the kitchen table with legal documents spread across it. I dug into disability rights laws, HOA regulations, anything I could find. The Americans with Disabilities Act was clear. Accessibility ramps weren't optional. They were legally protected necessities. Karen's threats weren't just cruel, they were unlawful. But I also knew Karen. This wasn't about the law for her. It was about power, about control, about reminding everyone that she was in charge. And if she thought we would back down, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. The rest of that day felt heavier than usual. Like a storm cloud had settled over our home and refused to leave. Emma, usually so full of chatter and questions, was unusually quiet as we waited for her school bus in the morning, and even as I waved her off. The sparkle that normally lit up her eyes had dimmed, and I knew it wasn't because of her braces or the weight of her crutches. It was the weight of Karen's words. I tried to shake it off, convincing myself that once Emma got to school and was surrounded by friends, she'd bounce back. School was her sanctuary, the place where she felt normal, where her differences didn't define her. But around noon, my phone rang, and the sinking feeling in my stomach told me I was wrong. "Mr. Johnson," came the gentle voice of Principal Martinez. "This is Riverside Elementary. I'm calling because Emma has had a very difficult morning. She's asked to call you several times and seems extremely upset. She's with the nurse right now." My heart clenched. "Is she hurt?" I asked, quickly. "No, not physically. But she keeps asking if she'll be able to walk home safely today. She's crying more than we've ever seen her. We thought you should know." Within minutes, I was in my car, racing toward the school. Emma had always been resilient, stronger than most adults I knew. But for her to break down like this, it meant the fear had dug deep. When I arrived, I found her in the nurse's office, curled up on a chair with her crutches leaning against the wall. She looked so small without them, her leg braces visible beneath her dress. She lifted her tear-streaked face when she saw me. "Daddy," she whispered, her arms outstretched. I rushed to her, pulling her close as she shook in my embrace. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Tell Daddy what's hurting that beautiful heart of yours." Her voice trembled as she spoke into my shirt. "What if that lady takes my ramp away? How will I go up to my room? How will I look at the stars with you at night? What if I get stuck inside forever?" Her words pierced me deeper than any weapon ever could. Since Sarah's death, our nightly ritual had been sacred. Emma and I would sit on the porch, gazing at the stars, keeping Sarah's memory alive. The ramp was what made those moments possible. Was her bridge not just to the outside world, but to her mother's memory? I cupped Emma's cheeks, forcing her to look into my eyes. "Listen to me carefully. Emma, nobody is taking your ramp away. Not now, not ever. I promise you that with every bit of strength I have." "But what if they do, Daddy?" she asked, fresh tears spilling. "What if I can't come home anymore? Then they'll have to go through me first," I said, my voice firm, with a determination that surprised even me. Emma studied my face for a long moment before finally nodding, her grip tightening around my neck. She wanted to believe me, but the fear lingered. That night, after tucking her into bed, I sat at the kitchen table with legal documents spread across it. I dug into disability rights laws, HOA regulations, anything I could find. The Americans with Disabilities Act was clear. Accessibility ramps weren't optional. They were legally protected necessities. Karen's threats weren't just cruel, they were unlawful. But I also knew Karen. This wasn't about the law for her. It was about power, about control, about reminding everyone that she was in charge, and if she thought we would back down, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. 3 days after the HOA meeting, things were unusually quiet. Neighbors waved more often, some even stopping by to say how proud they were of Emma's courage. For the first time in weeks, she slept peacefully, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit and whispering about the flowers we would paint on the ramp together. But peace around Karen never lasted long. The storm broke one late morning while I was in the kitchen preparing Emma's lunch. I heard it first a scream, not the kind of playful shriek a child makes, but the blood-freezing cry of pure terror. Daddy! I dropped the knife I was holding and sprinted outside, my heart hammering. At the bottom of the ramp, Emma lay sprawled, her crutches scattered. Around her, standing over her, crowbar in hand, was Karen Mitchell. Several of the ramp's support beams were splintered, fresh cracks running down the wood. I warned you this structure was coming down, Karen shouted, her voice raw with rage. If the board won't enforce the rules, I will. Emma tried to pull herself up, her little hands scrambling against the ramp, but without her crutches, she was helpless. Her braces locked her legs in place, leaving her vulnerable on the ground. She was sobbing, terrified. Get away from my daughter, I roared, charging toward them. But what happened next is a sight that will haunt me forever. Asterisk, Karen dropped. The crowbar and reached inside her jacket. When her hand came back out, it was gripping a black handgun. Time stopped. She aimed it directly at Emma, my 7-year-old lying on the ground, defenseless. Stay back, Karen screamed, her hands shaking. I am well within my rights to remove HOA violations. She doesn't belong here. None of this does. I froze mid-stride, raising my hands instinctively. My voice cracked with desperation. Karen, a child, a disabled child. Put the gun down. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Please, don't hurt me. I just want my crutches. Asterisk, it was the most gut-wrenching sound I had ever heard. My little girl begging for mercy from an adult who should have known better. But Karen's eyes were wild, her face twisted with something darker than rules or regulations. Children like her ruin neighborhoods, she hissed. People like you, lower property values. This used to be a respectable community. Her words were venom, each one a window into the hatred festering inside her. What she didn't realize, though, was that we weren't alone. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, had been walking her terrier and saw the entire confrontation unfold. She was already on the phone with 911, her trembling voice relaying every detail. Across the street, the Hendersons' teenage son had his phone pressed to the window, recording everything. 2 other neighbors were also shouting into their phones, begging dispatchers to send police quickly. Within minutes, though to me it felt like hours, the shriek of sirens filled the air. Ma'am, drop the weapon. 4 police cruisers screeched to a halt in front of our home. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, forming a protective wall. Between Karen and my daughter, Karen's face shifted from rage to panic as the reality sank in. She lowered the gun slightly, her hands trembling, but her words remained bitter. She doesn't belong here, she muttered again. Put the weapon down, now. An officer barked. Finally, with shaking hands, Karen set the gun on the ground and stepped back. The officers closed in, handcuffing her as neighbors poured onto their porches. Shock etched on every face. I rushed to Emma, scooping her up and placing her crutches within reach. Are you hurt, baby girl? Did she hurt you? Emma's eyes brimmed with tears. Daddy, why would a grown-up want to hurt a kid with crutches? I had no answer, not one that could make sense of such cruelty. The paramedics arrived within minutes, checking Emma while officers gathered statements from every witness. The Henderson boys' video had captured everything: Karen's threats, her words about people like her, and the moment she pointed the gun at my child. By the time Karen was driven away in the back of a police cruiser, her face pale and hollow, the truth was undeniable. In less than 3 minutes, she had destroyed her entire life, and yet, the fight was only beginning. Asterisk, the hours that followed felt like a blur, sirens fading, neighbors whispering, police cars pulling away with Karen in the back seat. But the image that stayed with me most was Emma, gripping her crutches so tightly her knuckles turned white, her body trembling as if the ramp itself no longer felt safe. That night, I sat beside her bed, long after she fell asleep, her little hand clutching mine as if letting go would mean the world might collapse again. I kept asking myself, how do you explain to a child that an adult pointed a gun at her, not because of anything she did wrong, but because of who she was? The next morning, the world knew. The Henderson boys' video went viral before sunrise. By noon, it had millions of views. Headlines screamed across every platform. HOA president points gun at disabled child. People couldn't believe the cruelty of it. Disability rights groups reposted the footage. Celebrities condemned Karen's actions. And hashtags like #MyRamp, began trending nationwide. But beyond the outrage, something else happened. Our community rallied. By mid-morning, I opened the front door to find a small crowd gathered in our yard. Mrs. Patterson was there, holding paintbrushes. The Henderson family carried trays of flowers. Children from up and down the street arrived with boxes of stickers, glitter, and chalk. We're here to make Emma's ramp beautiful, Mrs. Patterson said softly, her eyes warm, just like she wanted. Emma peeked out from behind me, her crutches clicking on the porch floor. When she saw the purple paint, her eyes lit up. Like Mommy's flowers. She whispered, "Yes, sweetheart," I said, my throat tightening. Just like Mommy's flowers. What followed was nothing short of magical. For hours, neighbors worked side by side painting the wooden boards in vibrant shades of purple and yellow, planting flowers along the edges, writing inspirational quotes in bright chalk. Kids pressed their painted handprints onto the ramp, leaving behind a kaleidoscope of tiny marks that turned Emma's lifeline into a canvas of love. Emma herself joined in, carefully dipping her brush into paint and spreading color across the wood. Her face glowed with joy, her laughter ringing out for the first time since the terrifying confrontation. "This is the most beautiful ramp in the whole world," she declared proudly, tapping her crutches against it like a drum. Neighbors cheered, and for the first time, Emma felt not just safe but celebrated. The ramp that Karen had called an eyesore became a symbol of defiance against cruelty. News crews arrived to film the transformation, capturing footage of an entire neighborhood standing united with a little girl who had endured more than she ever should have. By evening, the ramp wasn't just wood anymore. It was a monument, in painted flowers, children's names, encouraging words like "love lives here" and "courage wins." It was proof that hate could be answered with love, and that even the smallest community could rise above fear. That night, Emma sat beside me on the porch, leaning against my arm as the stars began to appear. Her ramp, now glowing with fresh paint and surrounded by flowers, stretched proudly before us. "Daddy," she said softly, "I think Mommy would like it." I swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "She'd love it, sweetheart, more than anything." For the first time in days, Emma slept soundly, her crutches resting beside her bed like loyal friends. And though I knew the legal battles were only beginning, one thing was already clear. Karen's attempt to tear us down had only built us stronger. Our ramp was no longer just Emma's bridge to the world. It was a symbol of community, resilience, and hope. And no amount of hate could ever take that away. Karen Mitchell's fall from power was swift, merciless, and entirely of her own making. Within hours of her arrest, the viral video had spread across every major news outlet. Commentators dissected every frame her words about people like her. The moment she raised the gun, the look of terror on Emma's face. It was damning. By the end of the first day, Karen's employer, a regional insurance company, announced her termination. Their statement was blunt: "We have zero tolerance for discrimination or threats of violence, especially toward vulnerable populations." Effective immediately, Karen Mitchell is no longer employed with this company. The fallout didn't stop there. The HOA board, embarrassed and furious that their president had brought such shame to the community, held an emergency vote. Unanimously, they stripped Karen of her position and permanently banned her from ever serving on the board. Again, but perhaps the most devastating blow came from her own family. Her adult children released public statements condemning her actions, distancing themselves from her completely. Her husband filed for divorce within a week, saying in court documents that he no longer recognized the woman she had become. The woman who once obsessed over property values had destroyed her own, her job, her marriage, her reputation, all gone in a matter of days. Legally, things were even worse. The district attorney announced multiple felony charges: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, making terroristic threats, and hate crime enhancements because the victim was a disabled child. The evidence was overwhelming: video footage, eyewitness accounts, and police testimony. In court, Karen's lawyer pushed for leniency, painting her as a woman under stress who had momentarily snapped. But the judge wasn't swayed. At sentencing, he spoke words that would echo in my mind forever. "Miss Mitchell, you aimed a loaded gun at a 7-year-old disabled child because you considered her a burden to your neighborhood. Your actions represent not only a crime against this family but against the very values of decency and compassion our society holds dear. Today, you will face the consequences." Karen was sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 2 years of probation and mandatory community service with disability rights organizations. As the gavel struck, I glanced at Emma beside me. She clutched her crutches tightly, her eyes wide but steady. In that moment, it was clear. Karen had lost everything, but Emma had gained something priceless: justice, and a community that finally stood with her. Karen's reign of cruelty was over, but Emma's story of courage and forgiveness was only beginning. The courtroom was heavy with silence after the judge's gavel struck. Karen sat at the defense table, her face pale, her hands trembling in cuffs. The weight of her sentence hung in the air like a final curtain closing on her former life. The judge then asked if we wished to give a victim impact statement. I was ready to speak, but before I could rise, Emma tugged at my sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, "can I say something?" I hesitated. She was only 7, and this was a courtroom filled with strangers, reporters, and the very woman who had pointed a gun at her. But when I looked into Emma's determined eyes, I saw Sarah's spirit there, steady, compassionate, unshakable. I nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart." Emma positioned her crutches, carefully standing tall before the entire room. Her voice was soft, but it carried with a clarity that silenced even the rustle of papers. "Mrs. Karen," she began, looking directly at the woman who had terrified her, I want you to know that I forgive you." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge leaned forward, eyebrows raised. "My mommy taught me that forgiveness doesn't mean what someone did was okay," Emma continued. "It means I won't let their hurt make me hurt too. You pointed a gun at me, and that was really scary. But I'm not going to carry that fear forever. I hope while you're in prison, you learn about kindness and helping people instead of being mean. Maybe someday you'll see that my crutches don't make me bad or ugly. They just help me do the same things other kids do." Karen's lips trembled. For the first time, she lowered her gaze. Tears slid down her cheeks, not the angry tears of pride, but the broken tears of a woman who had finally seen the damage she had caused. The courtroom was still, many wiping their eyes. My daughter, only 7 years old, had done something most adults couldn't. She had turned hate into a lesson of grace. That moment didn't erase what Karen had done, but it did something just as powerful. It freed Emma from being defined by it. Months passed, and life slowly began to settle again. But something had changed, not just in our home, but in the entire neighborhood. Emma's ramp, once the center of conflict, had become a landmark. Visitors from nearby communities came to see it, not because of the viral video alone, but because of what it had come to represent: resilience, unity, and hope. Disability rights groups wrote articles about it. Local schools invited Emma to speak, and though shy at first, she grew into her role as a tiny advocate with a powerful message. "Needing crutches doesn't make you less," she would say, tapping them proudly. "It just means you have colorful sticks to help you walk." The HOA, once Karen's weapon, rewrote its rules entirely. Accessibility was no longer something to be approved or tolerated. It was protected and celebrated. Our community center was remodeled to include ramps, wider doorways, and elevators. Neighbors even created a buddy system for elderly and disabled residents. Inspired by Emma's story, at night, Emma and I still sat on the porch, looking up at the stars. Her ramp stretched before us, painted purple and yellow, covered in handprints and quotes. She would point to the brightest star and whisper, "That one's Mommy." And in those quiet moments, I realized what Karen had failed to see. Her hatred had destroyed her own life, but Emma's courage had built something greater. The sound of her crutches clicking across the ramp each morning was no longer just the rhythm of survival. It was the steady beat of victory, a reminder that kindness, love, and forgiveness always win even when tested by the darkest cruelty. Emma's ramp wasn't just wood and nails anymore. It was a bridge to a better future.